for taking the time to be here today to continue in this series of conversations that are named opening our church spaces in a new reality. So this is part of this series, and we'll continue having these conversations along this month. And we have another one next Thursday, especially dealing with differentiating leadership and anxiety for both clergy and lay leaders. So we're going to have Canon Elisa Newton from the Diocese of Olympia joining us to lead us in that conversation. Let's take a moment to gather ourselves and to gather our thoughts and to give thanks to God for this opportunity. We give you thanks, Lord, for this time together, for the chance to listen, to share, and to learn. Open our minds and hearts to listen to that good news you have for us today. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. As we enter into fall stewardship season, many questions come to mind as we continue to navigate today's uncharted territory. One of the critical questions that come to mind is, how can this year's stewardship campaign, be a successful one? Today we gather as members of the Episcopal Diocese of New York and sharing this with other dioceses around us as well, and learning what will be good practices, what we can learn from each other. We are grateful for the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, and especially for Davey Gerhard, TEN's Executive Director, for taking the time to continue to share with us the many resources and the knowledge this organization gathered through many years of conversations and listening sessions. David joined us in September, and in having some conversations about offering plates and campaigns and access to the TEN's resources. The Diocese of New York is a TEN's member, which means that all of the resources are available to us at no cost. David joins us from his home in San Francisco. He also serves as Director of Development, Stewardship, and Plan Giving in the Diocese of California, and attends Holy Innocents Church at San Francisco Noe Valley neighborhood. David, thank you for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Ken and Victor, and thank you all of you for being here this afternoon as we engage the topic of stewardship and campaigns. This is a repeat, but with a new group of folks from a session that we did last Saturday. Wanted to make sure that there were 2 times available, so it might be a little familiar if you attended that or if you've seen the recording. Ken and Victor mentioned several other webinars that we've done throughout the summer. And as we move through today's slideshow, I will have links to those. And then you can go back and you can watch more detail on some of the things that we'll be talking about today. I will be using PowerPoint as a slideshow to go through today's presentation. I'll be stopping every once in a while to gather your questions. So feel free to type them into the chat window down below, and that will let us know that you've got a question. Or you can use the raise hand function in your participant tab to let us know that too. It's been a great honor to be with you all summer long in the Diocese of New York as you've been doing this work with stewardship. I am the Executive Director of the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, so I'm doing fundraising 24/7 for the church, and I love it. This is the best time of my life. No one knew in January that the year was going to look like it did. Well, maybe some people did, but we didn't hear about it. But now we know that the world has changed, and resources have needed to be adapted and communities brought together in a new way. And so we've been working all summer long on resources that will help you. We are recording this session. and I will send you both the recording and the slides at the end. Finally, if you could hit mute on your end if you're not talking, that'll stop any background noise. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which is going to start our slide presentation. And there we go. When we think about fundraising and stewardship in church, we have to remember that it starts with relationship. We can't just expect folks to walk into a situation ready to pledge, ready to make gifts, if we don't have some sort of a relationship with them. And that relationship hopefully begins before the stewardship campaign season. So as we've been gathering all summer long, as you do your work all year long, frequent and genuine communication is a really important piece of establishing that trustworthiness, that credibility that goes into helping people understand the community and its needs. We should be teaching all the time about money and meaning. And I believe that this is a theological position. Jesus spent 40% of his parables talking about money and possessions and our attachment to those possessions with good reason. In the first century, as in the 21st century, money and our attachments are important to us. It guides so much of what we do and how we make decisions. We put a lot of stuff on our money. We put a lot of stuff on it, like our future security, our past successes and failures, our kids' school plans, our retirement dreams, our medical concerns. All of these things live in a place where money intersects them. And that means that our money has real meaning. And so when we give of ourselves, when we make gifts to the church, we are sharing some of our most vulnerable and beautiful gifts with our congregations and with the work of mission in our communities. So I always want to remind us all that as we go into a conversation about money, we're really talking about meaning. We're talking about that intersection of money and meaning. When we ask for money in church, we should have a really clear, concise case for giving. So that means that everyone who's being asked for a gift should know where the money's going, why it's needed, how it's being raised, how it's being spent. And that starts with some transparent and accountable leadership on posting your budget. Maybe you'll create a narrative budget so that people can tie the money spent to the programs offered. You should be able to quickly, concisely state your case. What's the impact of gifts in the community? Why does your church do what it does? Why does it need to keep its doors open and its church foundation built? So why are we doing those things? And I suggest that perhaps in the front and back of a small card, or if you want to think about that 11-second elevator pitch, right? What is the way you can boil down your case statement in clear, concise points that people can understand why they're being asked to give and where that money is going? We should make sure that we thank and expect everybody's participation in stewardship and graciously, gratefully thank them for participating, whether it's time, talent, or treasure, or a combination of all of them. Those gifts that they share with us are really important. And timely gratitude, making certain that as much as time as we spend getting the materials out and collecting them, we're also spending time thanking people for making those gifts. They're not just expected, we're not taking them for granted. We really want people to know that their gifts have impact and meaning. We should follow up throughout the year with what gifts they're doing too. So we should talk about our mission, and we should talk about how people's giving impacts the community. I want to talk a little bit about giving money online and making certain that your congregation has some tools so that you can do that. These days, I think that most people are comfortable making a gift online, and many donors expect there to be some kind of online component to being able to make their gift. This is true if it's for the plate or for our pledge. When it comes time for the plate, and imagine that day in the future when we can gather in person again, if I were to come to your church as a visitor and the plate came by me, you'd get very little from me because I don't carry cash. I have the same crusty $1 bills in my wallet that I've had for a long time. I use my debit card for almost everything. So for me, and for that person, you're leaving money on the table if you don't have a way for people to give online. This is true also of pledge redemption and recurring gifts. There are lots and lots of ways and tools that we can implement in churches. Some of them are easy, some of them are more complicated, some of them are very inexpensive, some of them are expensive, but we need to know what those tools are and offer them because people are expecting them. I would say that the more opportunities you can establish in your congregation for people to make gifts online, the more successful your giving will be. And it's not just millennials and Gen Z folks who make gifts online. Folks in the 40 to 59 category, the Gen Xers among us, we are the largest group of online donors. Those are your people who are beginning families, they are mid-career, they are hardworking folks, as we all are, but they are able and ready to make gifts online, and they're really familiar with it. It's not just church where we give our money online either, right? So every nonprofit, from the community arts organization to the big national endowment for wildlife or for Sierra Club, political action, they're all asking for people's money online and over their phones. If the church doesn't have a way for people to do that, we're missing out on some of the gifts. Faith-based giving online has grown almost 9% in the last 2 years, which is a pretty big jump for an institution that doesn't change very quickly. So let's let that sink in. It means a lot of churches are realizing the importance of this. We often think that our greatest generation, or the silent generation, as they're sometimes called, don't make gifts online, but that's just not true. 59% of donors, so our boomers, our greatest generation, our even older folks, they have made gifts online in the past. 59% of them have at least one time made a gift online. So they're familiar with the process, they understand it, the technology doesn't scare them, they get it. Across mainline Protestant denominations, if churches adopt online giving, they can see their giving increase up to 32%, and that's an average figure. So that's pretty big, right? That's just by expanding the number of ways that you can accept donations. I see we have some questions. I have one more slide to go through, and then we'll answer some questions about online giving. Donor-centric fundraising means that we make it easy for the donor to give. The more ways we can offer, for example, my own congregation in San Francisco, we allow people to use PayPal. We have an app for phone and computer called Tithely. We use that. And we allow people to make gifts on Venmo, which we were able to get in as a grandfather. So that process, we have 3 options for people making their gifts. They can still send checks. They can still give cash. We deal with those too. They can still have their bank write an electric check to us once a month. That's fine. But we also have all these other ways. Pick platforms that integrate with whatever your backend software is. So if you're using FileMaker Pro, or if you're using QuickBooks, most of the platforms that are out there will integrate with them. On July 25th, we did a big deep dive into many of the common platforms that are out there for online fundraising. And you can go on our website and view that on YouTube. You can look at the PowerPoint slides in English and in Spanish and learn all about it. What are some questions? I see that we have some. Victor, Ken and Victor, if you could read off some questions for us, I'm happy to answer.
Sure. Yeah, there is one question connected to the beginning of the presentation. What are common examples why people should give? And what's the typical and Episcopal requests? And then there's a second part to that question that do you have a list somewhere of those recommended tools?
Great. I can give you a list and I'll email it out to you when I send these slides later. I think in general, people want to know more than the budget line items when they're learning about why they should make a gift to their church. So yes, they do care about building maintenance and utilities and how much insurance costs, and we see those in the budget, but we really want to know where our money is going. So are we running a food pantry? Are we opening our church up to 12-step groups? Do we have other groups that use our space as a community center? When we can talk about impact, that's a good example of why we talk about what we do with our money and how we can frame that. I think the more we can use direct impact, so things like how many people did you feed? How many sandwiches did you make? How many backpacks did you collect and give out at school time? Like whatever your things are that you do for the community, you should be able to measure them and talk about them. That's real mission and ministry. And that's the kind of thing that your gifts allow. Even if they're just there to support salary and building, the fact that you are being able to do that ministry there is the impact on the community and what we should be talking about. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you for that, Davey. And there is a question that was sent to me in the private chat, and it's connected to, well, today, all our buildings are closed. And most of them are saying, why should I give to you if the building is closed?
Yeah, I've heard that. I actually had one person in my own diocese say, well, why are we paying the priest if they're not doing service every week? And I thought, aren't they doing all kinds of things? Aren't they like really busy trying to keep programs running and get money coming in? Like, why wouldn't you want to pay your priest right now? But these are essential questions that people have, and I get that. So what I keep saying all summer long, and we'll keep saying it until the doors are open again, that while the doors have been closed, the churches have been open. We are still feeding people. We are still caring for community. We are still engaging in our community. And those things, those essential pieces of church are still happening whether or not we can gather in the way that we are. If your church is doing virtual church in some way or another, it takes time and resources to put that on. You have people who are going into the church and doing, operating cameras, and even sometimes taking risks to be together to do that while being socially distanced, right? So there's still work being done and still a great number of things and reasons for why we should be funding our churches. The other thing is that the need of the community is greater, right? And when we think about, so just by your church being there on the plot of land that it is, doing the work that it's seen to be doing in the community, you're adding value to your community. In 2016, Partners for Sacred Spaces, just a nonprofit that mostly works on capital campaigns across denominations across the country, they did a study, they commissioned a study, and they interviewed churches, temples, and mosques across the country. And what they realized is that on average, a temple, church, or mosque contributes $1.6 million of service to its community just by being there. And that's an average number. So that takes into account mega churches with massive programs and tiny churches with just gathering and keeping each other safe, right? So what that means is that your church is doing work all the time, and keeping it funded is part of our work together. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you, David. There's another one here. Would you recommend a narrative budget in this COVID environment? Do you have outstanding examples to share?
I will send an example to you all when I send out the slides. And one of the resources I'm creating right now for TENS, it won't be ready this year, but it'll be ready for next year, is an infographic and a how-to on how to take your Excel line item budget and turn it into a narrative budget. I do believe in the power of narrative budgets because it takes fixed costs, or it takes costs that are across the top of your budget, like salary and insurance and utilities and building maintenance, and it spreads them out over your programs. And if you think about your programs as not just things like tutoring and food and outreach, but also the in-reach. So how much of your time is spent on sacramental life? How much of your time is spent caring for each other pastorally? How much of your time? And so you divide the resources up in those program categories as well. We sometimes forget to see ourselves as a part of the program of church, but we are. Our own communities are a part of that. So I do recommend a narrative budget in any time, especially now with that question of what's our church doing if the doors aren't open. We are doing a lot of things, and our clergy and our volunteers are working even harder in some cases to keep people connected, and so that we don't fly apart in these times of isolation.
There is a kind of a question. Let me read that what is here. Do we have any figures on how many people in our parishes have been impacted financially? Job loss, major hospital bills related to COVID, loss of small businesses income? One of the question. And has there been such an impact on parish members as to cause a decrease in pledged contribution, or people being afraid to give now because they want to hold on for emergencies?
Good.
And then the last part of that question is, have there been parishes that have been increased because people are feeling particularly generous in this time of need?
Great. Beautiful question. And thank you for that. So let me see if I remember all the pizzas and I'll answer them. I don't have any statistics on exactly how many folks have been impacted in our churches by this. And Ken and Victor, you might know more specifically for the Diocese of New York, but I don't know nationally or even regionally what that looks like. But I think it's fair to say, yes, we have been impacted. Many of us now know families that have had some sort of downturn or some sort of loss, whether it's been illness or financial loss, and increased costs in some cases where we've had to take on buying PPEs and keeping our, how to keep our kids in school and all this. So there's definitely impact. I think that, so in my diocese, the Diocese of California, we've been monitoring our congregations pledging all summer long. And there hasn't been a notable decrease in people making their 2020 pledges. Money is still coming in. Where our congregations are losing money is on space rental and preschools and things like that haven't been able to operate. But their pledging income is pretty standard. And I don't know what it's like in your diocese, but that's certainly in the diocese that I know best, but also in the ones that I've been working with this summer across the South and on the West Coast. I've heard that over and over again. Pledge income is maintaining itself. We're really finding a problem with space rental. And then to answer that third question, there is so much conversation about the need right now, the case for how we need to care for each other. And people's spirits and generosity is elevated. We ran a special, as a diocese, we ran a special fundraising campaign for COVID relief. And in my parish, we also did a special fundraising campaign both for wildfire relief. So we have toxic smoke, right? So giving everybody PPEs and the masks that they need, and buying air purifiers for people who were compromised. We did fundraising for that, and we saw great response to those sorts of needs. So I say that that's a part of it. We're going to talk at the end of this about sort of the tough conversations that come along with 2020 and 2021 pledging. And we'll come back to some of those conversations about how do we talk about uncertainty and how do we talk about tough times. But that's what I know about the statistics. Ken and Victor, do you have anything else regionally that you know about?
I'm going to share in the chat box a link to a study that have been done on how congregations have been impacted by COVID-19. And it was done, it's a study done by the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving.
Yep.
So today at noon, we attended a webinar put together by ECF, Episcopal Church Foundation, where they were explaining the findings of this. So I just put there the link that is specifically going to show you the study that was done and the results of this study. So here in the Diocese of New York, we're still working on that. There is the finance department, I would say, will be presenting a kind of more easy to understand study on what they have been doing and finding out through different surveys and different feedback that we have been receiving from congregations along this year. One of them, I would say, one of the results have been connected to the questionnaire that was sent online through the diocesan website and requiring how people were affected, and especially for next year's what is going to be the contribution by congregations as well. So there's something that will be coming up on that.
Thank you. Great. Yes, that Lake Institute study is a great one. I hadn't dissected it as much, so I wasn't ready to talk about it, but I think that'll be really helpful to see what's going on. All right, I'm going to move on, and then we'll have another chance in a minute to catch up on questions. I want to be mindful of our time together. Many congregations raise money through events, through event-based fundraising, auctions, church dinners, Christmas bazaars. If yours is a congregation that does that, I want to encourage you, please, to do that this year. These events can be run online with very low cost and then high yield, because all the money you're raising doesn't have to cover expensive costs as it might have in the past. So I want to give you some tools and talk really quickly about that. We gave a really in-depth webinar on this in September. You can see the video there and the PowerPoints, really going deep into the platforms. Some of them are very expensive, some of them are nearly free to be able to run events virtually. So I want to let you know that there is a lot of support out there for events. I've been going to them all summer so that I can learn about how to talk about them and help churches engage their fundraising. I've seen talent shows, everything from like a camera pointed at a piano and somebody singing, to a cooking demonstration, to juggling, you name it, it's out there. Churches are doing it, comedians, you know, it's all fun, right? And you can use the Zoom tools of like polling and voting to give people awards and have a great time with it and sell tickets in the process. I've seen dinners where people get a common dinner and they buy a ticket and they get on Zoom and they eat it and they talk and they have conversation questions and they make it a little bit like a party. So there are ways to do your spaghetti feed and your chili dinner online and have fun with it. And auctions. There are lots of tools to be able to do your silent or live auction. If that's a way that you've made money for your congregation to fund your outreach or to fill a gap, event-based fundraising is still possible virtually, and I want to encourage you to get into that. Any questions about event-based fundraising before we talk about campaign practices?
I have no questions here in the chat at the moment.
Great. I'm going to move on then. So here we are. It's October, and many of our congregations' stewardship campaigns are beginning. My church will begin its on Sunday, and so we're ready for kickoff. We've talked about this already. Develop really good materials this year. Since we're not in church and we're not able to make those announcements and talk excitedly about our programs, we have to rely on the materials that we create, color tools and things that we can send out via email that tell the story of our work together. Storytelling and stewardship are tied together because when we talk about how we're engaged, what we do together, why it matters to us, we help us, each other as Christian brothers and sisters understand the power of stewardship and the power of our gifts. We should form ourselves theologically. TENS offers reflections with thought-provoking questions weekly during pledge campaigns. We also encourage small groups to form, and one of our webinars goes into great detail about those small groups. So I want you to pay attention to that and think about it. All of these resources are free to you, and we want to make them available for you. This year, our resources include sample letters from clergy and wardens. And those are, yep. Oh, those are given to you in English and in Spanish, and they're given to you in Microsoft Word so that you can adapt them to your local need. We give you the pledge cards so that you can create a pledge card. It has the proportional giving on it, if that's one of your ways that you communicate what a person might want to give this year. We give you timeline and instructions for how to run a campaign virtually. And so step by step, what you can do, when things should drop, when they should be sent out, how you should incorporate that, how you run small groups, and we want you to know that. We did a big webinar. You have the resource right here. It goes into sort of excruciating detail about our resources this year and how they can be adapted for use in virtual campaigns. Please take a look at that, share it with your stewardship committee and with your vestry. Let them know that there's a lot of support out here this year. When we are inviting someone to make a gift to our stewardship campaign, remember that asking for money is never an easy thing. I have been, I've been a fundraiser for faith-based nonprofits and for churches for more than 2 decades. And I've asked for many gifts of all sizes. And I will tell you today that my palms still sweat whenever I'm about to make an ask, because it's scary, right? There's that big rejection no on the horizon. And it's a scary thing to ask for money, but it's not impossible if we train ourselves and we get ready for it. When I focus on my mission, when I focus on the mission of the organization and the mission of the church, and know that I'm doing good work, and I believe that I'm doing good work, then I don't have shame in asking boldly for people to join me in making a gift. So I'm not just asking for my own sake, I'm asking on behalf of the organization that's supporting me. And that allows me to be bold and not worry about rejection and not worry about how people are seeing me. It makes me feel confident. And so I remember that and I give you that wisdom. When asking, inviting a pledge, remember that you're doing it for all the members of your congregation and help that conversation be really important. Be clear, we keep talking about this, be clear about why you're raising money and focus it on the mission. That will help you know that the reason that you're asking for, the case elements that you state are important and they're meaningful. Finally, if no is one of the things that you're worried about hearing, know this: the Ecumenical Stewardship Center reports that 97% of church members who are invited to pledge will do so. So that is a good reminder to us all that yes is the common answer in stewardship campaigns. People are ready for this. They have an understanding that stewardship campaigns come around and why it is a part of our life together. And if you've been doing that work to frame them theologically all year long, that yes becomes easier for people to make. I give you here 4 examples of what you might use when you do extend that invitation. And you can read these and you can share these with your stewardship committee. But I tried to create simple invitations around the idea of renewing. So you're just making last year's gift again. Please invite people into that. When we can increase our giving, how you can ask somebody to make a stretch gift. And it's always an invitation. I made a big gift this year, or I know that people are able to make a stretch gift. Are you? It's an invitation. What to do when we know somebody's had a bad year. So that doesn't mean take them off the stewardship list, right? It means ask them to participate in a way that they can. Every gift is meaningful. Every gift has impact. And so even families that have had the worst year should still be asked to participate in stewardship and make a prayerful, meaningful, compassionate gift. That's how we participate in community in so many ways. Finally, we need to remember that not everybody is familiar with pledging. If they have come into your community this year because it's been easier to join virtual services maybe than it is to find a way into the back pew, embrace that. Help people understand that they are newcomers and we pledge. It's how we manage our cash flow and it's why we do the campaign the way we do it, and help them understand that before asking them to make their gift. We don't all come into knowing how to pledge and why we pledge. Finally, before we go into some tough conversations and answer some questions that you might have, I want to acknowledge a few realities. Whether you are a small church or a big church or rural church or an urban church, our volunteers are stretched this year. The people that we rely on year after year to do our stewardship campaigns have a lot going on. And we are online all the time and we have terrible work-life balance because the pandemic has made working from home and raising a family and going to school and having a social life all mixed together. So know that we're all carrying a little bit of a heavy burden this year as we go into stewardship. Much work is done by few people, and that's true this year as it is in many years. So know that. Help people feel uplifted by stewardship and its power and its impact in the community. That is one of the ways that we can address people's anxiety and isolation. About isolation, this might be the year for you to do phone calls or emails or Zoom conversations with every member in your church to talk about stewardship. We are isolated. We are isolated and not all of us are coming to virtual services or Zoom coffee hours. So find the way to connect to everyone and use your stewardship campaign as one of the reasons to do that. Finally, your mission or narrative budget will help people this year understand the meaning and the impact of their giving. I can't say this enough. It's a really important tool this year and how we help people connect their giving to the work that's being done, because they're not able to see the church and hear the choir and be in the space that they're used to. Help them understand that church is everywhere around us and it's participating in that wider community. Before I move on with some strategies for tough questions and stewardship campaigns this year, I see that we have a couple of questions and comments. So Ken and Victor, can you help us?
Yes, there is one question here. How do you adopt face-to-face solicitation to these COVID times?
So yeah, as I said, well, so first of all, I love face-to-face. I love peer-to-peer. I love one-on-one conversations about money. It's where we can be our most vulnerable and where we can use our relationships to guide us into deeper relationship. It's beautiful to create that kind of community. So yay, that you're even willing to do face-to-face conversations. Obviously, I am not suggesting that we get within 6 feet of each other and take off our masks and have a conversation. I think that the same tools we're using right now, or we are using to connect with friends and family, FaceTime and Zoom and phone and deep email conversations, are ways that we can do that one-on-one fundraising this year for stewardship. So where the stewardship committee takes the list of people in your congregation and makes an effort to contact everyone on their list and say, how can we help you understand what we're doing this year, and answer any questions about the budget, and will you join me in making a gift this year? That really important moment to moment kind of fundraising is important.
And there is a comment here. I think it goes in a kind of in a general sense, but it's a great invitation. Make sure to include those members who are not online by personal phone contact.
Yep. Personal phone contact is essential. People still answer their phones, or at least see that you called and can call you back. The other thing about Zoom, if you're using large group, so maybe a Zoom coffee hour to talk about your kickoff or to share your narrative budget or your case, Zoom is a good tool even for people who don't have computers, because it has a phone number, right? So you can dial in on a thing that you do know how to use and that every household has access to. And while you can't see and be seen, you can hear and be heard. I love that Zoom is a tool that allows for that kind of access. So you can still use the same tool you're familiar with, but give people access to it that way.
Okay. David, there is a question here as well. Can you clarify what is a mission-focused narrative budget?
So again, a narrative budget, a mission-focused narrative budget, talks about program and impact. It talks about, it takes all of the costs and spreads them out over program areas. And again, those aren't just the obvious outreach programs or things that have directors or staff attached to them. Everything that we do in church is somehow affiliated with program, whether that's outreach or inreach, sacramental life, our community, our communications. Those are all pieces and programs of things that we can spread a budget out across of. So if you say we're spending $20,000 a year on our utilities, on our heating bill, right? Well, that supports all the programs. You don't have to have one big line item that says $20,000. You can spread it over the food program and the sacramental life and the choir and the children's program and everything that you do. And it makes that budget look program related rather than line item related. It's just another way in. I'm not suggesting that you don't have a line item budget, because for transparency and accountability, you need to have a line item budget for people to see, but it's just another way to talk about it. And it's talking about impact.
Okay, that was my last question here in the chat.
Thank you. So we're going to have some tough conversations. You've actually asked some of them already tonight, so thank you. You've prepped the way. I want to help us feel ready on how to talk about money in church when there's economic fallout and pandemic-related unemployment. The first thing to remember is that there is no shame in a household pledging less this year than they did in other years. So we just want to make sure that everybody understands up front that we understand what this year is and how it is impacting people. Every gift matters. Whatever gift you prayerfully make is what matters to us. So there's no shame. We should train ourselves, our stewardship committees, and the people hearing those invitations to know that there's no shame in whatever they want to give. Let's also remember that it does not impact every household in the same way, this pandemic-related financial mess that we are in. Some households have suffered, some have not. Some have had unemployment, some are fully employed. My household, for example, I'm fully employed and spending less money than I normally do. So I didn't travel this summer and I'm not going out to eat or out to the theater or anything like that, right? I might actually have more money to give my church than I would in normal years. So know that and ask people. Don't assume that everyone's pledging is going to be diminished, because there are some households that are impacted differently this year, and help them make the best gift that they can make. Every conversation that we have about pledging is a pastoral one. Because we put so much on money, because we reveal so much to our community about our gifts, when we have conversations about pledges, they are pastoral conversations. Many times, my clergy friends tell me that they hear about somebody losing a job or having a change in their household in some way because they notice or they see that the pledge has gone down or disappeared altogether. And that's the first news they have, because we don't like to share bad news with people. People will call the treasurer and say, I'm not making my gift for a while, before they call the priest and say something terrible happened to me. So when we're talking about money, there are pastoral issues. We should be prepared for those, be sensitive to them when they come up. I always remind people, when you're talking about money, you're talking about everything that is related to a person. So don't be surprised if vulnerable conversations come up. Check in with clergy about the people who are on your stewardship list, which isn't to say if you're in one of those churches where the clergy doesn't know what their congregation gives, or if they do, you should just check with the people that are on your list. Is there anything I need to know? Should I ask this? Am I going into this like everything's fine, or is there something that you don't have to tell me the details, but is there a reason I shouldn't ask them for last year's gift? What do you know? And vice versa. When you find out something in a pastoral conversation about money, and you feel like the clergy does need to know, oh, there's been a real shakeup in this house, maybe you should give them a call. It's really helpful if we reciprocate and partner with our clergy in these moments. We also remember that we have been through bad economic times in our very recent memory. We got through them. There was recovery. We will get through this. There will be recovery. So let's remember that as we talk about tough conversations. How do we talk about our program for next year if we are facing budget cuts or program cuts or staff reductions? I realize that some congregations are looking at a trimmed down budget for next year because things have gone awry, or they're just financially in a place where they need to do that. So again, this is where keeping focus on the mission is really important. You're not going to stop caring for each other or feeding people or having music or taking care of your neighbors just because there are fewer staff or less program money to do it. We are still going to do that work because it's our Christian duty to do so. So find the ways to talk about what you're still doing and why giving is still important. Sometimes when there are program cuts, people feel like, well, I don't need to give as much. And that's absolutely the wrong proportional response, because in fact, we need to support the mission that is there and help the congregation build back up. If your congregation has worked all summer to create solvency and to work on its budget and applied for a PPP loan and received it or were rejected for it, helping people understand that you have been trying all summer to make that effort to keep your program running and to keep things present shares the goodwill for people to be able to know that you're not just relying on their pledges, but you're taking opportunities and you're looking for new sources of income and revenue and trying to make things work. Finally, there are going to be some members, and you know them, you've been saving them for that future capital campaign, or you have been waiting to ask them to redo some stained glass or something like that. This may be the time to ask people to make an extraordinary gift if they can, because it's important this year. And this budget is really tight. And so this may be the time to pull those people you've been saving for some future project into the now and ask them for their gift. Finally, what do we do with uncertainty? 2020 has been such a shock to us, right? Every week, every day, it seems to change and nuance changes. And so how do we plan for 2021? I mean, who knows? We may have political shift, we may have more economic shift, we may have other climate or natural catastrophe things to worry about next year that aren't even on our radar yet. So how do we plan for uncertainty in next year's budget? Because that's what we're trying to raise right now. And I say to all of us that we need to remind ourselves that Christians are used to uncertainty. We were born out of uncertainty. We have certain hope and faith in Jesus, but we have a lot of uncertainty around us and how we make ourselves known and how we keep ourselves and our mission focused. We've been under pressure, even persecution before. Christian communities know how to deal with uncertainty really well. And it's through our insistence on hope, and it's through our work together and our love for each other that we can get through even the most mysterious times. What we need to remember in that is that we are dealing with this together. We are finding ways forward. We're engaging in open communication with our communities about the right ways to move forward. I see we have some questions and we have a little bit of time left. I know some folks are going to need to pop off, and I want to say thank you for being here. But if you can stick around for a minute, and I will answer any more questions, and then we'll see where we get.
Yeah, I think there's a conversation that I think is very critical to the moment as well. What the resources that you are sharing, that it says these recommendations are great and world class, and I'm truly thankful for them. And you do realize, right, that how overwhelming this sounds to those of us who are sole priests in parishes with limited staff. I would recommend the diocese allocate resources to produce a video of all the parishes to share with our parishioners that promotes the typical work of all of our priests and parishes, so that others can help us make the case. And there's some comments on that. especially in what is happening in some places that are we are cutting everything to the bone right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's another realities as well that I think inviting our bishops as well to create a video that can help us make the case in our parishes as well. So those are the comments that have been presented now in the box as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's the conversation that we need to be having, right? How can we support each other? Last night, so I serve on the Commission on Ministry in my diocese, and we were talking with the newest crop of candidates for priestly ordination. And they asked us, what does seminary not prepare us for? What's coming out? What's out there that we don't know about yet? And that conversation about collaboration, remember, we're not islands. We are parishes that are connected through a diocese and through our communities. You all are a resource to each other. Your diocese is a resource to you. The national structures, including TENS, rely on us, get us involved, involve each other. No one is in this alone. And this is a really important thing to tell, because we don't teach this in seminary all the time, right? We don't teach about the collaboration that you're going to need to have as a priest when you're out there dealing with all of the things yourself, the budget, the pastoral needs, the leaking toilet, all of that stuff is happening, and you need to collaborate. Help us help you collaborate more.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share a couple of things I'm putting into the chat. We have some upcoming webinars at TENS. If you are interested in learning more about planned giving, about legacy societies and endowments, and if you need information on what to tell your donors who usually make gifts out of their required minimum distribution from their IRAs, that's all changed this year because the tax code is different thanks to the CARES Act and the Secure Act. We're going to be doing a webinar on that in November, or at the end of October, sorry. And so please join that. You'll get lots of information about legacy societies and taxes, always a fun topic. But hey, it's a part of our life together. I see a question to me, is there a way to save this chat log? Yes. I will send it out to you in the transcript, so it'll go out and you can see it and be able to remember this conversation.
And there is a question to me. I think, yeah, I'm going to bring these requests of the video to the bishops and say and to see what we can produce. I think that will be something that can be done. We have been working as well in other videos connected to facilitating some conversations on stewardship in the parishes as well, especially connected that to time, talent, and treasure as well, kind of bringing that language again to the common and bringing people as well to that common mission that we all have as well. But that, I think that will be crucial as well, to have some the bishops, hopefully all of them doing some videos connected to stewardship this year as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on stewardship campaigns that I can answer for you while we are gathered together? As you think of them later tonight or when you're brushing your teeth, that's when my greatest insights come to me. Send me an email. I've put it into the chat along with my phone number. I love to talk about money and meaning and church and Jesus and fundraising and making your mission possible. So please reach out to me about anything we've talked about or any questions you have about church fundraising. I'm happy to be a partner with you in that thinking, to come and talk with your stewardship committees and your vestries, and to do more work with the Diocese of New York.
Yes, and thank you, David. Have been great resources. All the conversations that we have had at the moment, they are all of them in our website and the diocesan website. And David is kindly going to share those with you as well. So they're going to be in the same email that he will be sending out. And thank you again for sharing with us your great resources and your knowledge and experience with us, and most of all, for being available to continue these conversations with even particular vestries and stewardship campaign groups this year as well. Thank you for that.
You bet. Well, thank you for the invite to serve. I'm glad to be here and glad to see so many stewardship leaders.
Yes.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye.